Picture this. You're cruising down the interstate, maybe running slightly behind schedule, when you pull up behind this absolute beast of a truck. Brand new? Chrome gleaming like it just rolled off a magazine cover. The kind of vehicle that probably costs more than what most people have sitting in their entire retirement account. And here's what kills me about this moment. The person behind that wheel? They're probably pulling in less annual income than you are. Not more, less. So what's happening here? How are regular working folks somehow swinging monthly payments on vehicles that cost as much as a down payment on a house? I'm Alex, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time dissecting why people make the money moves they make. If you've ever scratched your head, wondering how your coworker affords that $70,000 pickup while complaining that groceries are too expensive, stick around. Hit that subscribe button and drop a like if this clears up the confusion. Before we break down the mechanics of how people are pulling this off, let me set the stage for what we're actually looking at here. Car payments in America have crossed into territory that would have seemed completely absurd just 10 years back. We're talking monthly obligations that exceed what plenty of people fork over for rent. And yet somehow, millions of Americans are signing these deals every single month, rolling off dealership lots in vehicles that cost more than the median household pulls in annually. But here's the confusing part. Most of these folks aren't secret millionaires flying under the radar. They're not Bitcoin winners or trust fund beneficiaries. They're teachers, nurses, plumbers, retail managers, office workers. Regular people with regular paychecks who've somehow figured out a way to make the numbers add up. Or at least they think they did. The reality? There's an entire system engineered to make these impossible payments appear possible. And grasping how this system operates isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about protecting yourself from making a money decision that could derail your financial trajectory for the next 7 to 10 years. Let's start with the most obvious question. How much money are we actually talking about? Because when I share these average payment figures with people, they usually think I'm making it up or pulling numbers from luxury car data. The average new car payment has climbed past $700 monthly. 700. That's not for some luxury sedan or exotic sports car. That's the average payment for a regular new car bought by a regular person shopping at a regular dealership. But it gets worse when you zoom in on trucks and SUVs, which have basically become the default choice for American buyers. These payments regularly push past $900 monthly. And seeing payments exceed $1,200? That's not even unusual anymore. $1,200 every single month for 6, 7, or even 8 years straight. We're discussing payments that total more than $80,000 over the loan's lifetime. And that's before you factor insurance, maintenance, fuel costs. Those all stack on top. Now you might be thinking, hold up, Alex. Maybe people are just earning way more these days. Maybe wages have climbed enough to support these kinds of payments. And if that's where your head went, I hate breaking this to you, but that's not what's happening. Median household income is ticked up, sure, but nowhere close to enough to justify these payment amounts using traditional financial common sense. The old rule was your car payment shouldn't exceed 10% of your gross income. These days, people are blowing 25 to 30% of their take-home on just the vehicle payment. So how are they doing it? The answer sits in a combination of factors that have completely rewired how Americans approach car buying. And none of these factors spell good news for the people signing these loan papers. First up, let's discuss loan terms. Remember when a car loan meant 3 years, maybe 4 if you really stretched? Those days are as dead as dial-up internet. Today's car loans routinely stretch 6, 7, or 8 years into the future. Some lenders are even pushing 10-year car loans now, which honestly sounds like something cooked up in a financial nightmare factory. The appeal makes sense on the surface. If you spread that $60,000 truck payment across 8 years instead of 4, the monthly payment drops dramatically. Suddenly, that truck requiring a $1,500 monthly payment over 4 years becomes manageable at $900 over 8 years. The monthly number looks reasonable, which is exactly what the buyer focuses on. But here's what most people don't consider when they're sitting in that dealership signing papers. By stretching the loan term, they're not just lowering the monthly payment, they're massively increasing the total amount they'll pay for the vehicle. That $900 payment over 8 years adds up to over $86,000, compared to roughly $72,000 if they'd taken the 4-year loan. That's an extra $14,000 just for the privilege of having a smaller monthly number to look at. And honestly, that's conservative. Most people don't get the best rates, so the real gap is usually bigger. Even worse, they'll be making payments on that truck long after it's worth a fraction of what they paid. Cars depreciate fast, especially in those first few years. By year 5 or 6 of that 8-year loan, they'll owe significantly more than the vehicle is worth. They'll be trapped in what's called being upside down or having negative equity. Can't sell it, can't trade it, not without writing a check to cover the gap. But stretched loan terms are just the opening act. The second major factor is the rise of 0% financing and other promotional interest rates. That sound too good to be true, because they are. Walk into any dealership and you'll see giant banners advertising 0% APR for qualified buyers. Sounds incredible, right? Free money to buy that new truck? Here's the thing about those 0% offers that dealers absolutely don't want you understanding. They're not free money. The financing cost is baked into the vehicle price. You're either paying full sticker for the car and getting 0% financing, or you're getting a discount on the car and paying market interest rates. But you're not getting both. Ever. More important, those 0% offers usually come with strict qualification requirements and shorter loan terms. The people who actually qualify for 0% financing are typically the same people who could write a check for the vehicle anyway. They don't need the deal. For everyone else, which is most buyers, the interest rates on these stretched car loans can be brutal, especially if their credit score isn't pristine. I've seen people paying 8, 10, even 12% on car loans. At those rates, you're basically paying for the vehicle twice over the loan's life. Then there's the trade-in game, which has become increasingly critical in how people manage these massive car payments. Here's the typical cycle. Someone buys a new car with a 6 or 7-year loan. After 3 or 4 years, they're bored with the car or want something newer, but they still owe more on the loan than the car is worth. So what do? They roll that negative equity into a new loan for an even more expensive vehicle. This creates a cycle where people are constantly paying for cars they no longer own while simultaneously taking on debt for new cars. Their loan balances keep climbing even though they're making payments every month. It's like a financial treadmill where the faster you run, the further behind you fall. The dealers absolutely love this setup because it creates customers for life. Once someone gets trapped in the negative equity cycle, they become a captive audience for new vehicle purchases. They can't afford to break free because doing so would require writing a check for thousands just to get out of their current loan. I've seen people roll 10, 15, even 20,000 in negative equity into new loans. They're paying for 2 or 3 cars they no longer own, all wrapped up in one massive payment on the truck sitting in their driveway. But perhaps the most disturbing trend is how normalized these extreme car payments have become. People who would never dream of spending $1,200 monthly on anything else somehow convince themselves it's reasonable for transportation. Think about it this way. If someone told you they were dropping $1,200 monthly on coffee, you would probably stage an intervention. If they said they were burning that much on clothes every month, you'd assume they had a serious shopping problem, but somehow when it's a car payment, we just shrug and say, well, you need reliable transportation. This normalization didn't happen by accident. It's the product of decades of marketing that has convinced Americans their vehicle is an extension of their identity. Your truck isn't just transportation, it's a statement about who you are as a person. It shows you're successful, reliable, hardworking. And if you're not driving something impressive, well, what does that say about you? The automotive industry has become incredibly sophisticated at tapping into these psychological pressure points. They don't sell cars anymore. They sell lifestyles, dreams, social status. That commercial showing the rugged truck climbing mountains isn't selling you transportation. It's selling you the fantasy that you're the kind of person who climbs mountains, even though the closest you get to off-roading is parking on grass at the state fair. This emotional manipulation makes it way easier for people to justify payments that would otherwise seem completely irrational. When you're not just buying a truck but buying into an identity, suddenly that $900 payment feels like an investment in yourself rather than a financial mistake. But let's get back to the practical mechanics of how people are actually making these payments work in their monthly budgets. Because even with stretched terms and emotional justification, $700 to $1,200 is still a mountain of money for most households. This is where things get really creative. And by creative, I mean potentially catastrophic for long-term financial health. Many people are essentially restructuring their entire financial lives around their car payment. They're treating it like a mortgage payment and adjusting everything else accordingly. I've watched people move to smaller apartments or stay with roommates longer than planned just so they can afford their dream truck payment. They'll eat ramen for lunch every day while driving. To work in a vehicle that costs more than some people's houses. They'll skip vacations, avoid restaurants, put off other major purchases, all to support a car payment that eats 25 to 30% of their take-home income. Some people are taking on second jobs specifically to cover their vehicle expenses. They'll drive for rideshare companies or deliver food on weekends using their expensive truck to generate the income needed to pay for that same expensive truck. It's like a bizarre form of automotive servitude, where your car becomes both your master and your means of survival. Others are dipping into retirement accounts or taking loans against their 401k to make down payments or cover repair costs. They're borrowing from their future selves to fund their current transportation fantasies. And since most people are terrible at calculating the true cost of early retirement withdrawals, they don't realize they're potentially sacrificing hundreds of thousands in future wealth for a truck that will be worth practically nothing in 10 years. Then there's the credit card shuffle that's become increasingly common. People will put maintenance, repairs, insurance, and fuel costs on credit cards to free up cash for their monthly car payment. They're essentially using high-interest debt to subsidize their transportation costs. It's like using a flamethrower to light a candle. Technically it works, but it's probably not the smartest approach. The most concerning trend I've witnessed is people taking out personal loans or home equity loans to cover down payments or negative equity from previous vehicles. They're leveraging their homes to buy cars, which completely misunderstands the purpose of both assets. Your house should be building wealth over time. Your car should be getting you from point A to point B as efficiently as possible. When you start using your house to fund your car addiction, you've got the equation completely backwards. But here's where the story gets even more wild. Many of the people making these extreme sacrifices for their car payments aren't just doing it for one vehicle. They're doing it for multiple vehicles. The average American household now owns more cars than licensed drivers, which is mathematically impressive and financially terrifying. It's not uncommon to find families with 2 or 3 car payments running simultaneously. Dad has his work truck, mom has her SUV for the kids. Maybe there's a third vehicle for the teenager or weekend adventures. Suddenly, we're talking about combined car payments that exceed what most people pay for housing. These families have essentially created their own personal auto financing companies, except instead of making money, they're hemorrhaging it every month. They're managing multiple depreciation schedules, insurance policies, maintenance schedules, loan terms. It's like running a small business, except the business loses money every day and the inventory becomes worthless over time. The psychological effect of managing multiple car payments is fascinating and disturbing. People become experts at juggling due dates and minimum payments, but they lose sight of the bigger picture. They'll celebrate paying off one car loan while simultaneously taking on 2 new ones. They measure success by their ability to keep all the plates spinning rather than questioning whether they need to be spinning plates at all. And then there's the insurance component that most people completely underestimate when calculating affordability. Insuring a $60,000 truck costs significantly more than insuring a $20,000 sedan. Add in comprehensive coverage, collision coverage, gap insurance, and all the other protections recommended for expensive vehicles, and you're looking at insurance premiums that can easily exceed $200 monthly. For families with multiple expensive vehicles, insurance costs can approach or exceed $500 monthly. That's $6,000 per year just for the privilege of legally driving their depreciating assets on public roads. Many people focus so intensely on negotiating the monthly payment that they completely forget to factor in the ongoing insurance costs until they're sitting in the insurance agent's office getting a reality check. The maintenance costs present another surprise that catches many people off guard. Modern vehicles, especially trucks and SUVs, are incredibly complex machines with advanced technology, sophisticated emission systems, premium components. When something breaks, and it will break, the repair bills can be staggering. A simple brake job on a modern truck can easily run $800 to $1,200. Transmission problems can hit $5,000 or more. And if you're unlucky enough to need major engine work, you might be staring at repair bills exceeding $10 grand. Many people making extreme car payments have zero emergency funds set aside for these inevitable repairs, which means they'll likely end up putting major maintenance on credit cards or taking out additional loans. This creates a vicious cycle where the car payment that was supposed to be manageable becomes the catalyst for a debt spiral that can take years to escape. You'll see people with pristine $70,000 trucks sitting in their driveways while they frantically search their couch cushions for gas money. It's like wearing a Rolex while living on instant noodles. Technically impressive, but missing the point entirely. The fuel costs alone for these massive vehicles can approach what people used to pay for entire car payments just a decade ago. When you're driving a truck that gets 15 miles per gallon in real-world conditions and gas prices bounce between $3 and $5 per gallon, you're looking at fuel costs that can easily exceed $400 monthly for someone with a normal commute. Add in the occasional road trip or weekend adventure, and that number climbs even higher. But most people buying these trucks never calculate this ongoing cost. They're so focused on getting the monthly payment to a number they can stomach that they completely ignore all the other expenses that come with ownership. But here's where the math gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely terrifying from a financial planning perspective. Let's take a typical scenario and run the real numbers that most people never bother calculating. Imagine someone buys a $55,000 truck with a 7-year loan at 6% interest. Their monthly payment works out to about $800, which feels manageable compared to the $1,200 payment they would have faced with a shorter loan term. Over the life of that loan, they'll pay roughly $67,000 total. Add in insurance at $250 monthly, and that's another $21,000 over 7 years. Factor in fuel costs of $350 monthly, and we're talking another $29,000. Maintenance and repairs over 7 years will easily run another $15,000, probably more. When you add it all up, this person will spend over $132,000 on transportation over 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, they'll own a vehicle worth maybe 15 grand if they're lucky. They've essentially paid $132,000 for the privilege of driving a $15,000 truck. That's not transportation financing. That's wealth destruction with cup holders and heated seats. The most depressing part of this equation is what that same money could have accomplished if invested instead. If someone took that $800 monthly payment and invested it in a simple index fund earning 8% annually, they'd have over $70,000 after 7 years. Not only would they have avoided the financial burden of the truck, they would have actually built wealth instead of destroying it. That's the opportunity cost nobody calculates when they're signing loan papers. But here's the part that really shows you how broken this system is. After those 7 years, when the loan is finally paid off and they own the truck free and clear, what do most people do? They immediately trade it in and start the cycle over again with a new loan on a new truck. They never actually experience the financial freedom of owning a paid-off vehicle. They're perpetually trapped in the payment cycle, always owing money on a depreciating asset, never building wealth, always one unexpected expense away from financial disaster. But here's the psychological trap that makes this cycle so hard to break. Once someone commits to these extreme car payments, they develop what I call automotive Stockholm syndrome. They become emotionally attached to their financial captor. The truck isn't just transportation anymore. It's a reflection of their identity, their hard work, their success. The idea of driving something cheaper feels like admitting failure or accepting a lower social status. This emotional attachment makes rational financial analysis nearly impossible. When someone suggests they could save hundreds monthly by driving a reliable used vehicle, they don't hear a practical financial strategy. They hear an attack on their self-worth and their right to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They'll defend their truck payment with the same passion they'd defend their family, even though that truck payment might be preventing them from actually providing for their family's future. The automotive industry understands this psychology better than most people understand themselves. They've spent billions researching exactly how to trigger these emotional responses and convert them into loan signatures. Walk into any dealership, and you'll notice they don't spend much time talking about total cost of ownership or opportunity cost of capital. Instead, they focus on monthly payments, immediate gratification, social status. The sales process has been refined to overcome every rational objection a buyer might have. Worried about the payment being too high? Let's stretch the term. Concerned about reliability? Here's an extended warranty you can finance. Nervous about depreciation? Don't worry about it. You'll probably want to trade it in for something newer in a few years anyway. Every objection has a scripted response designed to keep you moving toward the signature line. And the sad part? It works. It works on millions of people every year. There's also another factor we haven't touched on yet that helps explain how people are swinging these payments. Dual incomes. In many households, both partners are working, which creates the illusion of being able to afford more than they actually can. When you've got two incomes coming in, an $800 car payment might seem manageable. But here's the trap. Those dual incomes are often necessary just to cover basic living expenses. The car payment isn't being funded by surplus income. It's being funded by money that should be going toward retirement savings, emergency funds, kids' college funds. People look at their gross household income and think they can afford these payments, but they're not accounting for taxes, insurance, retirement contributions, and all the other things that eat into that paycheck before they ever see it. The take-home reality is way different than the gross income fantasy, and dealerships know this. They'll qualify you based on gross income, knowing full well your take-home is significantly less. There's also this persistent myth that cars hold their value, or that you're building equity as you make payments. Neither of these is true for the vast majority of vehicle purchases. Cars depreciate fast. That new truck loses 20 to 30% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. By year 3, it's worth maybe 50 to 60% of what you paid. By year 7, when you finally pay off that loan, you're lucky if it's worth 25% of the original price. You're not building equity. You're watching your money evaporate in slow motion while paying interest for the privilege. It's the opposite of wealth building. It's systematic wealth destruction. Here's another factor that feeds into this madness. Lifestyle creep. People get a raise or a promotion, and instead of banking that extra income, they immediately upgrade their car payment to match their new income level. They're perpetually keeping themselves broke by scaling their expenses to match their income growth. They never actually get ahead because every income increase gets immediately absorbed by bigger car payments, bigger houses, more expensive lifestyles. The person making $60,000 a year with a $600 car payment gets a raise to $75,000 and suddenly they're driving a truck with a $900 payment. Their income went up 25%, but their quality of life didn't improve at all because they immediately spent that extra income on a nicer vehicle. Social media has made this problem exponentially worse. People see their friends, coworkers, influencers posting photos with their new trucks, and they feel left behind. They feel like they're not keeping up, like they're not successful enough. So they go out and finance a truck they can't afford just to maintain the appearance of success on Instagram. They're willing to destroy their financial future for social media validation. It's insane, but it's happening everywhere. The comparison game is killing people financially. They're measuring their worth by what they drive, what they wear, where they vacation. And all of it is funded by debt. It's a house of cards that collapses the moment anything goes wrong. And that's the thing about these extreme car payments. They work great until they don't. Until you lose your job. Until you get sick. Until something unexpected happens. When you're spending 25 to 30% of your income on a car payment, you have zero margin for error. One bad month and you're behind on payments. 2 bad months, and you're facing repossession. I've watched people lose their vehicles, destroy their credit, file for bankruptcy, all because they stretched too far to afford a truck they didn't need. And the worst part? The truck gets repossessed and sold at auction for a fraction of what they owed but they're still on the hook for the difference. You can lose the truck and still owe $20, $30, $40,000. That debt follows you for years, ruins your credit, prevents you from getting approved for mortgages, apartments, even some jobs. All because you just had to have that new truck. All because you couldn't be content with something reliable and affordable. All because the marketing machine convinced you that you deserved it. But here's what really gets me about this whole situation. It's not just the money you're spending on the car, it's the opportunity cost of what that money could have become. Every dollar you spend on an excessive car payment is a dollar you're not investing in your future. It's a dollar you're not putting toward retirement. It's a dollar you're not using to build wealth. And because of compound interest, those dollars you're spending today could have been worth 5, 10, 20 times more in the future. You're not just spending money, you're destroying your future wealth. That $800 monthly payment over 30 years invested at 8% becomes over $1 million. $1 million. That's what you're giving up to drive a nicer truck today. Most people never run these numbers. They never calculate what their car payments are actually costing them over their lifetime. If they did, they'd probably throw up. Here's what kills me. There's a better way. A way that doesn't involve financial stress, crushing debt, or working second jobs to afford a vehicle. Buy a reliable used car. Something 3 to 5 years old that someone else already took the depreciation hit on. Pay cash if possible, or finance it for 3 years max with a substantial down payment. Drive it for 10 years. Maintain it properly. When it's paid off, keep driving it and bank those payments you used to make. After a few years of banking those payments, you'll have enough cash to buy your next vehicle outright. No loan, no interest, no payments. Just write a check and drive away. This approach doesn't just save you money on the car. It frees up hundreds of dollars monthly that you can invest, building real wealth instead of destroying it. It gives you financial margin for when life happens. It reduces stress. It puts you in control instead of being controlled by debt. But it requires something most people struggle with. Delayed gratification. Being content with good enough. Instead of always wanting the newest and best. Not caring what other people think about what you drive. This is really about identity, about who you think you are versus who you're trying to appear to be. Most people driving these expensive trucks are trying to project an image of success while being broke behind the scenes. Real success isn't driving a truck that costs more than you make in a year. Real success is having money in the bank, investments growing, no debt, options when life throws you a curveball. Real success is being able to weather a job loss without panicking. Being able to help your kids with college. Being able to retire before you're 70. That's success. Not the truck you drive. But we've been conditioned to measure success by external markers, by what we can show off to others. And the automotive industry has exploited that conditioning to trap millions of people in debt cycles they'll spend decades trying to escape. The question is, when does it break? When do people wake up and realize they've been played? For some, it happens when they lose their vehicle to repossession. For others, it's when they run the numbers and realize they'll be making car payments for the rest of their lives if they don't change course. For some, it never happens. They stay trapped in the cycle, perpetually broke, perpetually stressed, always one emergency away from financial disaster. And they convince themselves it's normal, that everyone struggles with money, that this is just how life works. But it's not normal. It's a manufactured crisis created by an industry that profits from your financial stress. And the only way out is to recognize the game for what it is and refuse to play. So there you have it. The mystery of how people are affording these insane car payments isn't really a mystery at all. It's a carefully orchestrated system of stretched loan terms, emotional manipulation, and financial gymnastics that would make a circus performer jealous. People aren't actually affording these payments in any meaningful sense. They're just kicking the financial can down the road while convincing themselves they deserve that shiny truck. The next time you see someone driving a vehicle that costs more than your house, remember they're probably eating cereal for dinner to afford it. And maybe, just maybe, that reliable used car in your driveway isn't looking so bad after all. If this opened your eyes to how the car loan game actually works, hit that like button and subscribe. We're breaking down more financial traps like this, places where industries have figured out how to systematically extract wealth from people who don't realize they're being played. The game is rigged. But once you see the rules, you can stop playing. Or at least stop playing on their terms. I'll see you in the next one.